Kia ora rā tātou katoa. Tēnā tātou e te whare. Ko te whiu o te kōrero i whiu ki Tarimano, ko te ao ngāhoro, ko te ruahina tawa kia heimoa, kia rere kimua, anea Ngātirangi Weohia, mihi atu nei kia koutou kei oku tuakana, kei oku whaa, kei oku rangatira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Ko Paora te Hurihanganui tōku ingoa, no roto o Ngātirangi Weohia ai, o tira tērā taha, whera ki te tuakana, ai mua rā, i roto i a Ngāti Tahu, Ngāti Whao. Ko taku piringa hoki ki a Ngāti Awa me Ngāti Tūwharetoa. E mihi nei ki a koutou i tēnei rā. Te whakapāhatu au, kare au e tai ki te reo pōhiri o Ngāti Roto Whio o taku iwi o ngai tūhaurangi Ngāti Wāhi au inanahi rā. E rangi rā, e mihi kawa kēnei ki a koutou. Kei ngā taitai huanga o te motu. I've been with Te Arawa Whānau ora for about a year now. Spent 16 years in the sector of sport, physical activity and nutrition. I know it doesn't look like it right now. I just got off a plane from America, so it's probably the hangover effects from America. Whānau, as Māori, I think is one of the biggest briefs that we can walk into this world with at the moment. And what Whānau ora allows us to do is think about the world as Māori and how that manifests as whānau. And everyone in this, I'm speaking to the converted, but all of our whānau here know how to be whānau because we are. So Ngākau Māori for us is easy because we are Ngākau Māori. And we have the ability, and Dr. Kitty said this in the beginning, we have the ability to join wairua, our intuitive nature, and our Ngākau Māori together in a split second to make change and help our whānau, open doors for our whānau so that they can see a pathway to a better future. So it's been a real privilege for the past year to work with Te Arawa Whānau ora and Whānau ora in general. As the former CEO of Te Papatakoro o Te Arawa, we've been, that organisation and 11 others have been in the Whānau ora game since the inception here in the local region. And I'm very fortunate that I get to open up some of those doors through the voice of Whānau ora for our whānau. When I first came in, I think I had about a month to be inducted before the August lockdown of last year happened. And we had to respond locally around the lockdown in our area. We've been on the news lately for our Golden Mile, or whatever it's renamed now. And so that's been a big focus for me as a leader of Whānau ora in this area. But there's a number of things that, as Māori, we use as catalysts for positive change. So despite some of the societal norms that are happening, whether it's here or anywhere else around our motu, I'm a firm believer that with the right intent, with the platform that our strategic intent that we saw this morning allows us to connect across motu, because we need to compare and contrast with our other whanaunga. We've been doing that for a million years as iwi. It allows us to now bring a new energy into the system. Ko tērā te Ngākau Māori kia hau nei, ki Paora nei. So kura oku whakaro i tēnei wā, aha koe he iti, he paunamu. But I do know that we can't do this alone. We have to do this together. We need to synergise with our kāwanatanga whanaunga as well. But Ngākau Māori is about the actualisation of things and manifesting that in the right intent. It's not about contracts, and we all know that. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora.
Tēnā koe Paora. O tira ka huri tērā kau, kia koe Glenda.
E aku nui, e aku rahi, e aku whakatamarahi ki te rangi, tēnā koutou. Ngāti wāhi au tūhaurangi, ngā mātanga o te manaaki, e mihi kauana kia koutou. Ko e au, he uri ahau no te maunga tītohea o Taranaki me te awa tupuna o Waikato. Ko Glenda Raumati ahau e noho whakaitia i mua i a koutou i tēnei ata. He Whānau ora mōku. Ngākau Māori, you know, it's when you sit in this room, it seems silly to even be saying the words aloud, because we are the manifestation of that. Because if you weren't that way, you wouldn't be here. So, but in terms of my mahi, our services is based at Tūranga Wāwai Marae i Ngarawahia. So the way, what drives us and the way that we are is driven by the legacy left to us by Te Puea. So if that's your legacy, and for you who have no stories related to our tupuna whaia, Tūranga Wāwai grew out of the, we turned 100 last year in 1921. So when Te Puea came to Ngarawahia from Te Paina, she brought with her the survivors of that 1918 influenza pandemic. And that the people, the orphans from who survived came to Ngarawahia. They were the nucleus that established the marae. But what was driving her was about turning the dark times around for our people that they had experienced, we all experienced as a consequence of colonisation, the loss of land. You know, we have a laugh at ourselves at Tūranga. While other people are telling stories about the exploits of their tupuna, Huturoa, Tamate Kapua, we tell stories to ourselves about the hardships that our whānau have experienced since the Pākehā arrived in New Zealand. And so when you have the example of Te Puea, her teachings, her ways, and if you believe that you'll have a responsibility to keep it, then that's where our Ngākau Māori comes from. My colleague is here, and we've been in our organisation the longest, probably too long, and we tell people we are the keepers of her legacy, and that's what drives us on a daily basis. What does Ngākau Māori look like? It looks like all our aunties at the pā. I thought that analogy that Kitty put up today was really, really absolutely appropriate in terms of the pātū wata and the place of refuge that offered up to our people. And that's a part of manaaki. You know, if the aunties at the pā personify all of those things. And so that's the source of it for us. That's where I know it's the source for all of us. Our story from home is no different from your stories, and it's your stories that drive you on a daily basis, keeps the fire going, keeps the love growing for our people, because every day they make changes, when they take steps forward, even when they take steps backwards, you know. If their love continues to grow, then you know you're doing the right mahi, you're driven for the right reasons. Tongikura are important too, in terms of, I just want to make a small comment about tongikura. Tongikura is the other thing that drives us. And inside tongikura, there's a solution for every adversity that you come across. In times of toima, you go to your tongikura to get your inspiration. And this whole COVID period, you know, there were three that kept us grounded, kept us and driven. Tāwhiao talked about kia niwha te ngākau, ki ngā mahi atawhai I te iwi. You know, being resolute and steadfast in the way that you apply yourself, looking after the people. Keep focused on that. Te Puea said, haria mai ngā pani ki au. Now, if you think about that, you think, that's important. When people are at their most vulnerable, that's when you need to step up. You know, so we have all these messages in our tongikura that help the fire, keep your ngākau full, so you can share it out with others. So there's just a koina tāku mo tēnei wā, but yeah, that's part of our story.
Tēnā koe Glenda, e tika na wau nā kōrero, ara ka hoki ngā mahara Ki konei, kia te arawa, I tērā o a tātou nei ruruhi kuia, ara ko te puia. Nāna no hoki tō tātou nei whānau, wa tātou nei tūpuna I āwhina, I manaaki hoki, I raro iho I a tā apirana ngata ki tiki tere. Nō reira, ka tika me maumahara ki aia I tēnei o ngā rangi. Hurihanganui nei ki a koe iri, nāu anō hoki te waha kōrero I nāi nei.
Tēnā koe Mesia. Tēnā tātou, koeri Mako tōku ingoa he uri ahau no Ngāti rangitihi ngā rua hine rangi hoki. Ka tako mai te rau o taku mihi kia koutou ki te iwi kāinga hoki ki tūhau rangi koutou e whakapau kaha ki te manaaki a tātou. Tēnā koutou. I'm Iri, and a bit like Paora, I was listening to Paora talk before, and he said he'd only been in the role for, a year, before the lockdown. I'd only been at Waipareira, I'm currently at Waipareira, and I'd only been there for a year before I stepped into the role that I'm currently in, which is to support the frontline services. And so I hadn't experienced a full lockdown there, but this organisation had worked for a year to get their response right. And as soon as the second, the COVID lockdown that happened in August last year came into play, this team shifted into this huge response. And we were in lockdown in Auckland for over 100 days, longer than anywhere else, and this is where Ngākau Māori came to the fore. So we were experiencing lines of thousands of people lining up to be tested at our CBAC, thousands of people lining up to be tested at our vaccination centres at both of them. And you could see Ngākau Māori being demonstrated there by our kaimahi who had been shifted out of all of their usual roles. You could see very quickly too those who only maybe had Ngākau Māori at home and not on the front line. Because that was, that's the thing, like, shift is really difficult and change is difficult for people, and those who were able to shift and understand we were there for whānau were able to do that very easily. So when you saw Beamers, Mercedes, luxury cars lined up to come to our vaccination centre ahead of Māori, yet you were on the manaaki line to give them water bottles and make sure their kids had little games to play in the car, you saw those kaimahi and our own kaimahi who were able to do that even though they didn't want to, because those cars and those people weren't our people, but we were there to manaaki everyone that came through, and that was Ngākau Māori. We were able to do that. It was interesting seeing the response that we got to that display of manaaki from people who weren't Māori. And it was interesting, and some of them were very surprised by the fact that we would think about doing those sorts of things, that we would stand out in the rain and give them water bottles, that we would make sure they had kai, that we would say, you've only got 4 hours to wait, not long now, but that people would be coming backwards and forwards to check on them to make sure that they were okay. That if we saw they had little babies in the car, we would regularly check on them, we'll try and sneak them up. I know there were some people in that manaaki line, Irirangi Tamihere, that let cars go up to the front. Irirangi was our leader on the manaaki line. But that was the thing too about Ngākau Māori, and I think Kitty mentioned it earlier in her kōrero about dropping egos. So when you're put in that situation, your ego is dropped, and we had people on the front line who very quickly became leaders that weren't necessarily in leadership positions in their day-to-day role. I mean, most of you know Jackie here. Well, Jackie and I were pretty much the unskilled labourers of that whole operation. We couldn't vaccinate, and lots of our kaimahi became lay vaccinators. Lots of them stepped in to help our clinical team. Jackie and I couldn't vaccinate, we couldn't do the vax admin, we couldn't test, all we could do was wipe chairs. But we were the best chair wipers there, and watch out if you came on shift after us two to wipe a chair, but again, that was the whole thing with our operation, was doesn't matter what your day role is, if you're no good at something, we find a place for you, and we were good at wiping chairs. And that was Ngākau Māori. We were all just pitching in where we had to. And for 107 days, that's a really long task and a really hard task at sometimes. And so you had to be really conscious of people's energy and their ability to maintain that level of manaaki and that level of being tau when people came in and weren't as tau as them when they wanted to be seen straight away. And so all of those things, well, I know I'm just talking to the absolute converted here, because like Glenda said, if you don't have that, you wouldn't be sitting here. But that's the essence of Whānau ora, is we're there first and foremost for our whānau, and whatever things we hold, we've got to just put them aside and display manaakitanga aroha, the way we know aroha is, and all of those things, so that whānau will trust us, because that was the thing. We were operating on an economy of reciprocity. We were giving them something, they were giving us something back. And we just had to keep going like that. Is that my 5 minutes? No. Otherwise I'll keep going, no.
Because Eddie, when I referred to her as being my co-host on Te Arawa FM, there were some mornings at around about 7:20 I'd be doing a live stream or having a koro with Eddie, because obviously Te Arawa aren't just here in Rotorua, we are everywhere. So it was really important that we had messages going out to our Te Arawa whānau far and wide, and Waipareira Trust were able to provide to our Te Arawa whānau up in Tāmaki Makaurau. So nei rā te mihi kauatu ki a koe. Kia koro wai anō hoki I ene o ngā kōrero ka tuku atu te rākau ki a koe hikurangi maunga, Dr. Curtis Bristowe. Kia ora. Nau te wā.
Kia ora. Sorry, whānau, I'm just going to have to stand up.
Etu.
I can feel those karaua whispering in my stand up boy. So, kia ora tātou. Privileged to have the opportunity to be here. George Reedy, our CE, was supposed to be here, but he hasn't been able to attend the CE for Te Hurihanganui o Ngāti Porou. But he said, just to say to you fellas, I'm a younger and better looking version of him. But I think he missed out taller as well. Are you there, George? So very honoured and privileged to be into this space. First and foremost, I'd like to, when I was considering what I was going to say this morning, thinking about on my speech, I wasn't sitting on anything vibrating. Where's koka? No, I had to have a dig, koka, had to have a dig. But again, koka, mere peka, I remember when you came and spoke to us in Tūranga, again, beautifully articulated, with passion and integrity, so thank you. Into Kitty, once again, you know, intelligence, beautiful articulation, passion driven. Makes me want to grab a taihana, tino rangatiratanga flag and run out on the road screaming, mana motu hake. But once again, I thank you again. When I think of our women, a lot of our kaupapa of meaning our women are carrying. And especially, like I was looking on the list of speakers on the panel, and I was the only one that didn't have CEO. And I can't even say I'm CEO of my house. Because our women of Ngāti Porou, they're cut of a very specific cloth. You know what I mean, go and talk to them, they're sitting over there. But, I heard our whanaunga from Tūhoi, those women are cut from a very specific cloth as well, very similar to us. Well, my wife's Tūhoi Ngāti Porou, so I got the right and the left. But you know, I think our women are carrying a lot of the kaupapa of meaning for our people. And just looking in this room now, so I aspire towards the day when our men can stand up and tauori te haere, te anga whakamua tō tātou waka. So tēnei tangata e tuake nei, no whea, me kira e toru aku waiwai. No, I won't go. But I'm Ngāti Porou, but I have connections to Te Whānau Apanui and Te Aitanga Mahaki. So again, very privileged to be in this space and have the opportunity to talk to you. Ngākau Mahaki or Ngākau Aroha. For me, I think that's the difference between reaction and response. Pākehā teach us knowledge, but they don't teach us wisdom. The difference between knowledge and wisdom, if I can draw upon our tohunga from Te Tai Tokerau, is the difference between mātauranga and maramatanga. That mātauranga only becomes maramatanga when it touches with your centre, and then it's transformed. And our centre is made up of our core beliefs and values, all of these po. And then what happens then is that when it touches, you know why you're learning what you're learning, and more importantly, how to use it. And that's the difference between reacting to something versus responding to something. I remember a story from a survivor of Auschwitz, one of the Māori Nazi death camps. He said how he got through it was whatever was happening to him and how he chose to respond to it was choice. And that's where our tikanga sits. It's how we choose to respond to whatever is happening to us. But there, he said that place is a place of power, development and transformation. And that's our Ngākau Māori. It's how we're doing what we're doing. But to draw on our Waikato, you know, when we look at all of our po, they only have power when we use them in a practical way, whereas they remain in theory. As I have managed to navigate the Western educational system myself and maintain my cultural identity, which is a task unto itself, theories are easy to come up with, Theories of how to do things. Our libraries are full of theories. But we need to be theoretical practitioners. You know, it's not how far back we can go with our knowledge, it's how far we can take it forward. And for our knowledge to still have value, now it needs to have contemporary application. So this is all of our Ngākau Māori for me. But this for me is how we're doing something. More important, as I think from our runanga and our harauta Whānau ora, is why we're doing it. When we look to our vision, when our aspirational space we're moving towards. And as the tuahine Kitty said, the dreaming, you know, we've forgotten how to dream as Māori. We've forgotten how to aspire. We don't, because of the societal circumstance we live in, we're living from day to day. And from week to week, we don't know what it's like to look 100 years ahead, or 200 or 1,000. But that's exactly what our tīpuna did. And it's understanding that a vision in self can have a mana to pull you forward. Because when you lock that in your mind, every day it's an impetus to move forward, because what you're telling yourself every day is there's a better place for me to be. But for our people, it wasn't just important to draw on these again, where we're going, but how we choose to get there. That we choose to get there in an ethical and moral way that is Māori. So we succeed as Māori. And that the initiatives and solutions of meaning for us as a purpose are going to come from us as Māori. If you look at any transformative change that's happened for us as a people, it's come from us. If we look at our kohanga reo movement, none of these changes were made based upon the goodwill of the government. You know, the kohanga reo, the land marches, Whānau ora, even Whānau ora. You know, it was based upon the drive and the will of the people, and it was a movement. So I think the closer we can get back to who we were. Now, what did the bro say yesterday? Back to the future. You know, we walk forward with our eyes to the past. And it doesn't, and there's a commonality among us as well. It doesn't matter where you're from or who you are. Yeah, you can operate in a way that is Māori. Sorry, I've been blabbing for too long, but I'll just say one more thing. Oh, no, I won't. I've blabbed enough. Kia ora tātou.
So that comes back to the dreams and aspirations, as has been spoken a lot about this morning. Ka mihi atu ki a koe, anō hoki I merepeka nāu, anō hoki I ruruia I tērā kākano, I te timatanga o tēnei rā. Dreams and aspirations of our people. At the last conference that I facilitated here was the Pāti Māori conference. And one of the pātai that had come actually not from that floor but a previous floor, and is something that I'm reminded of when I hear the kōrero of our four po this morning, was a pātai by Ratu Tibble. Actually, it was his answer to the pātai. Where will our reo be in another 100, 200 years? And his answer to that was, I would see our reo being the dominant language of Aotearoa. That is my dream and that is my wish for my mokopuna yet to come. Nō reira, kei wainga I a tērā, ko tō tātou nei reo, hei oranga anō mō tātou e te iwi Māori. I'm now going to hand the rākau over just to see if there are any questions or pātai, whether it be virtually or from our floor via the app. karekau he pātai, nō reira, I think we've managed to pull in a little bit of time. Me paki mai, kia rātou. Tēnā koutou.